Just a very quick thing before we get started. If you've not yet subscribed to Some Assembly Required on your favorite podcast player, then please do. It'll help me a lot. Some Assembly Required is about matters of the heart and the head. And this episode is extra special for me. One, because Danny Painter has agreed to share openly about her journey to therapy, and I think her story may just help break some stigmas. And two, because I get to express my gratitude to Danny for helping me get out of my own way. If it weren't for that chance conversation at an event in 2022, this podcast might not exist. Your words, they rang so true for me, Danny, and for that, I'm very thankful.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I remember that conversation actually. I feel like though, and I have to say this to you, I really feel like you already knew you were going to do it. You just needed someone else outside of your circle to say, yes, do it. That's all you needed.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think up until when we spoke about it, I didn't really have the right language. So, for example, friends or industry colleagues would say, go for it. You're so good. Of course you can make a podcast. And I felt like I was just being placated. It was just being thrown about, and because they knew my technical skills. But then when we spoke, I told you that I didn't feel qualified to speak about trauma, mental health, neuroscience, all these things. And your words were something to the effect of your lived experience qualifies you to talk about those things. So thank you.
No, thank you. It has been an it's been so incredible to watch it, like from beginning, from even before there was anything to where it is now. But just like that whole thing about, oh, people are just placating me. They're just being nice. They're just being kind. I think we all feel like that. And I also struggle with accepting that people are genuine when they say, no, you're good or you're talented or you're beautiful or whatever it is. And I really think we all need to get out of our way about that because I don't think that's healthy.
What is the name on your birth certificate? Because when I read your Instagram bio, Danny like the boy, Painter like the artist.
Yeah.
Feels like it was created.
No, it's me. No, on my birth certificate, I am Danielle Harting. But I married into Painter. And when I started Kids TV, we dropped the Danielle and went for Danny. So now I'm Danny Painter.
What's it like inside your head?
Noisy. No, it's a lot. It's busy all the time. I never stop thinking. I overthink every single thing I do. I'm already living for tomorrow, next week, Thursday, tonight, yesterday. I'm still there. It's very, very busy. Have
you managed to quiet that? How do you quiet that?
That's a very good question. There are moments that there is nothing. And it's probably not the healthiest coping mechanism, but one of them is when I'm getting tattooed. I find that it is very soothing to my soul. And this is going to land so dodgy, but pain switches my brain off. So when I'm being tattooed, it definitely allows me space, which is probably why I'm almost covered.
How many do you have?
No, I don't know. I think last count was around 20, but that was about 3 years ago. So more, maybe 30. I don't know.
So did I understand this correctly, that the pain helps you to switch off?
Yeah.
What does your therapist say about that?
Oh, my therapist is so lovely. He, I really worry that he judges me, and I worry that he's more worried about me than he lets on sometimes. We haven't really covered that aspect. We're kind of just working through a lot of the other stuff. I'm a little concerned that he's going to worry about me more, but we'll cross that bridge and Richard will live.
You mentioned Kids TV a little earlier. What is your strongest childhood memory? Has it got anything to do with being on television?
It has mostly to do with being on television. So just a little bit of backstory. I started in the industry when I was around 6 in theatre, musical theatre, into Kids TV, and then into radio. And I think one of my strongest memories there are many, and I've had a very full and colorful life. But I think one of the biggest ones was I was at an event and I was surrounded by people. And it was, I think, the first time that I realized that I was triggered and I had anxiety and I needed to get out. And there are pictures of this event, and I look fine and I look happy and I look like I'm living my best life. But I was just a 16-year-old alone in a crowd of people that all wanted a piece of me, and I had no idea how to navigate that. And I think that's when I realized that this was not okay and I needed out.
When did you start going to therapy?
In January this year.
Okay, so it's a long time after the fact.
Yeah.
And it's been building, I suppose. On a scale of 1 to 10, how tolerant is your family structure of everything? How accepting are they of things?
I mean, I'd like to say 10 because I'm pretty sure they're going to listen to that, but that would be a lie. So obviously I come from a mixed race family. My dad is Zulu, my mother is Jewish. And I think in both of those cultures, there is an ethos of you are depressed because you're not working hard enough.
I see.
Or you are unhappy because you are bored or you're lazy. And I remember my grandfather actually saying that. And with my dad's culture, it's not really accepted to talk about feelings.
Okay.
You work until you carry on. Mom is the same. As my mom's gotten older, though, I think she's become more tolerant because she realizes that there are different things. And you can be a functioning, working, productive member of society and still be sad. So I don't think my dad knows that I'm in therapy. We've never spoken about it. If he does, he probably would support it. My mum is very supportive and she often asks how it's going and what we talk about. But I can't tell her because sometimes it's her.
And not necessarily in a bad way, right? I think that's the thing that we need to learn through therapy, or those that haven't gone to a therapist. It's not necessarily to cast blame on other people. It really is for us to understand ourselves better, and therefore how we interact with the world. It makes a big difference to be able to talk about it. I struggle. I'm not going to lie. When I went to therapy, I ended up with a hypnotherapist, and I didn't know I was going to see a hypnotherapist. It was just the therapist that was recommended to me. And because I was enduring burnout, and only when I got there and he's like, so my specialty is hypno. And I was like, what are we doing? And it worked out far better for me, I think, because I've now tried talk therapy since then. And it just doesn't really work for me. And I think to that end, then it's not always about the person that we're there to speak about. It's more about learning about ourselves and that reflecting back and forth, right?
Yeah. And how to deal with yourself on the daily. You know, we have so many behaviors that we have to unlearn. And it's so funny how all of us only reach out when we are at rock bottom. I went through a really, really bad last 4 years, I would say. And was considering therapy the whole time through it. The whole time I was like, I should see someone. And it took really, really hitting that super darkness of, I don't want to be here anymore, for me to actually even Google therapists near me.
I was going to ask you, and now that you've led me there, why did you seek professional help?
I went through a really rough 4 or 5 years, but also not knowing that was on the back of other stuff that had happened that I didn't deal with, right? From childhood, from teenage, from all of these spaces and places that we're in, and all of the traumas that happen from, you know, being SA'd to being groomed to, kids TV was all just on its own. And then I lost my grandparents within the space of 2 weeks, and they were the foundation of our world, my world, specifically my family. And I found my grandfather, and I never mourned that. I never did anything with that.
I'm so sorry you had that experience.
I had door slam. So everything lives in nice compartmentalized little cupboards in my head, and I never deal with it.
Okay.
COVID happened and we were all alone with our feelings, and I was drinking myself into the floor, and I realized that I hated everything about my life, but it was my fault because I chose it. And I got to a point where I really didn't want to be here anymore. And that scared me because if you look at me from the outside, everyone is always saying how amazing it is, you know, and how great my life is. And it is. But that doesn't make it good. I think I was so far away from myself that even if I had 5 million rand in the bank and I was living on a yacht in Monaco, I would still have been in the same space because I wasn't sitting with myself. And so I drank half a bottle of vodka and Googled therapists near me. And I didn't find one near me. I found an online therapist who was a Soto Zen Buddhist monk, but also a therapist. And that kind of resonated with me because I wanted to heal all of me.
Right.
I wanted to reconnect with the universe and nature and myself. And I really just wanted to feel better. And so, we had our first session and now I'm with Richard once a week, every week.
I'm so happy you found the therapist for you as quickly as you did.
Me too.
Because that doesn't happen necessarily for everybody. I've heard stories where my wife, for one, had seen several different therapists throughout her university days and then post. And there were just some that she just really didn't click with. For some reason, she pursued seeing therapists because she obviously knew she needed help.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you found someone as quickly as you did. That's remarkable. And kudos to Richard. Shout out to him.
No, big shout out to him. So full disclosure, there were two therapists that I'd found that I liked the vibe of, right? I'm an energy I'm like one of those weirdo hippies with crystals. And I liked the vibe of both of them. And I actually screenshotted both of their profiles on this website and I sent them to my best friend, Ronaldo. And we both went through both of those profiles and we both leaned into Richard. You know, one was very psychiatrist driven with medication and there was Richard where that could be an option, but it was more a lifestyle change, meditate, do the good things first. And we both went, okay, no, that's the one. And I mean, yeah, I know I'm so privileged, so lucky to even be able to afford it is a privilege.
Yeah, well, this is the other thing, right? Sometimes we don't know we need it. And then we feel we can't afford to do that for ourselves as well. And I suppose there are many layers there too, isn't it? Because then we speak about, do we love ourselves enough to put the effort in to better ourselves and to become more healthy? I can relate to what you were talking about, how people on the outside would say, but you've got it all together and everything looks great. How can you possibly, be having these thoughts, whatever they may or may not be? And for me, very similarly, people can look at me and go, but you got it all together. What do you mean? You seem to be coping fine. I'm like, yeah, but that's what I'm projecting to you, that I'm doing my level best to make sure that you are okay. I still need to get back to what that is for me. Like, why do I deep down do that? And I assume it has something to do with a childhood trauma that I just haven't figured out yet, that I'm not even aware of. What aspect of being in the spotlight at an early age, you speak about that singular event that sort of triggered, but what do you think being in the spotlight at an early age has done to empower you versus the things it may have done to maybe cause trauma that triggers now in your adulthood?
I think it gave me a sense of purpose when I was young. And also it taught me connection and how important that is. Mm-hmm. It taught me skills that I don't think I could have learned at any university for the job that I currently do, whether it be interviewing skills, lighting, camera. I was very involved in all of it and I tried to learn as much as I could. And I'm incredibly grateful to the humans that allowed me those spaces. I learned a lot about the industry, which I'm very grateful for because now I feel like I'm set up to be okay when negotiating a contract or negotiating a new show or pitching. But I also think that it's, on the flip side, it became me. I became Danny, the kids' TV presenter. And when that went away, I felt like I lost something.
Right.
I felt like I lost a piece of me, which is actually a good thing because I then realized that I am not what I do. I'm just Danny who has this cool job.
Mm. And isn't it interesting then that for many people, when we pile on all the good things, so it's interesting to hear you talk about there are good things.
Yeah.
But it's not all good, and to recognize that sometimes the bad is as equal. It's both. Plus there's other stuff, right? It's both. And there are things that we need to take into consideration. So when you lose all those, the thing that has caused your identity or created your identity, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's evolving, right? It's finding a new way to interact with the world and letting go, almost like shedding a skin. Reptiles are not my favorite, but letting go and rebirthing in some way. This is all sounding very esoterical all of a sudden.
I love it. I'm living for this energy. Yay.
And coping with the pressure to perform, I mean, that surely also shows up in your adulthood too, something that you were doing constantly as a child. The pressure to perform now, how does that show up?
So that's something we're actually, we've been talking about a little bit, because I do feel it now more than ever. And I've also realized, and this is going to sound so me, but I've realized recently that I've never not been some version of Danny Painter.
Okay.
If I, and someone actually pointed it out to me about a month ago. We were in the car on the way back from something, and they said, I never realized that you're always on. I never realized that if we're at a restaurant, or if we're at an event, or if we're at a mall, or if you're always on, you're always Danny Painter, unless you're at home. And it's not entirely different, but there has to be a piece of me that I keep for me. And I realized it when he said it, and I was like, wow, you are right. And it clicked for me that perhaps some of the feelings of isolation and burnout and anxiety could be from that. So there is definitely a pressure to perform. There is an always on. And it's okay, but I need better tools to deal with it. And that's something that we're working on.
I like that. Has Richard been able to come up with tools that you can walk away with, that you can implement when you are in a position of, let's say, flight, fight, freeze? Yes. Have you got tools at the moment? And what does that look like?
100%. So I mean, you know this, but and a lot of people know this because I post about it. I have very, very bad anxiety all the time. Pretty much all day, I'm anxious most of the time. But there are panic moments in my day where I then need to fight, flight, freeze. And Richard has given me breathing tools to calm my nervous system and to bring me back to myself. And it's I think he calls it square breathing. So it's in, hold, out, and again. But also we have been working on daily practices, because this is I'm not going to ever probably be better. It will never be gone, but I need to manage it better. And in the daily practices, that will then get me there. And it's small things like getting up in the morning and 15 minutes but like straight after 15 minutes, after you've been up, straight to meditation and meditate. And whatever that looks like for you, whether that's prayer or meditation or a guided meditation, it doesn't matter. And you do that for as long as you want. We started with 5. I'm up to about 20 minutes. We do that twice a day. I'm journaling. I am getting out in the sunlight. I'm trying to fix my relationship with food. Trying to move my body more. So it's all of these practices that we do that when something happens, I can go back to those spaces. But for the moment, it's breathing, which I think also we need to understand that when you're panicking, it's very hard to go, oh, I'm just going to breathe and it's going to be fine. You're fighting yourself, right? But it has definitely helped me more than once in the last couple of months, the breathing. And it's so stupid because we breathe all the time. You would think that just breathing would be okay. Like it's the silliest thing.
And really channeling our focus on that, listening to you reframe everything for yourself. And I know people that may not have gone to therapy, but they're listening and they're going, I can identify with that feeling of pressure. I can identify with that feeling of anxiety or not wanting to enter a crowded room because I prefer to be on the outside of the circle, and they don't quite understand why those things sit within them. They just know there's a barrier. And as you reframe that and talk about breathing, it is it's such a normal thing. We do it all the time. We don't even think that we're breathing. We don't think about our breathing, but what a difference it can make when we do focus our energy on doing just that one thing and letting it really go through our bodies and just focusing on that. It makes such a massive difference. My therapist told me to do something about pushing into my hand. I've already forgotten. I should really go back to him. But like doing a thing where I feel my nervous system again that is being overstimulated, and to press down into my hand, which means nobody else can see me doing it, and to really just count into that and to breathe whilst doing so. Again, just a nice little tool that you can use at any point that doesn't show up like, I'm going to close the door. I have to go behind, closed doors to...
I have to go breathe.
Right? I have to go breathe. It's such a simple thing to do. So I love that. Is there something that truly scares you? And for good reason. I don't mean a snake or a spider. I mean a life event that truly does scare you and you really want to avoid it at all costs.
I mean, there's a lot that truly, truly scares me. But definitely something that because of my grandparents, death terrifies me. Not so much anymore. We've definitely worked on it. But I think the idea of dying makes me incredibly nervous. But also on the flip side, I wanted it at one point, So there was that whole figuring why we were there, and then also working on the why we're scared. And that scared me because then I was worried that if I wasn't scared, it would be easier, to not be here. But it doesn't work that way. Therapy is very weird. Never works the way that you think it does. So death, I'm still working on death. We're not 100% good with dying, but I don't think anyone is because it's the unknown, right? We're all kind of unsure. Any kind of illness, sickness terrifies me. But I also think that's because of my grandparents. And we're working on that. Other things, I mean, I have anxiety around a lot of things, but that's kind of, you put your head down and you do it. But I think illness and hospital and doctors and dying, but they kind of tie into each other, which then, of course, leads me to be overly cautious. And then that in turn gives me anxiety. So it's just this wonderful circle of events.
Right. Trauma for you, I know you've spoken now about finding your grandfather and death being very real. How does the trauma show up? Is it literally just anxiety? And what does that look like then? And for Danny, on a given day where she experiences trauma, she's been triggered, what does that look like? How does that show up in your life?
I think there are many ways that it shows up. I think recently my body is not good. You can hear I'm a bit nasal. I've been sick for a really long time, actually. And I think that's one way that it's been showing up. But also it shows up in my destructive behavior and my self-destructive patterns, in the not going to bed, not eating, not sleeping, drinking too much, partying too hard, running essentially that's all that is. When you're doom scrolling or when you're binge drinking on a weekend, you're running. You don't want to be alone with yourself because self is scary and healing is hard. So that's definitely how it shows up. When I am triggered, immediately I start to feel the anxiety build up around my chest and throat area and feel like I can't breathe, can't swallow, and then immediately start panicking that I'm going to get sick or faint. And then I panic because people will see me get sick or faint, and then I panic harder. And then I flat. I need to get out, go, leave, and breathe. So yeah, look, it sounds a lot more dramatic than it is. You will never see that. You'll never ever see me do that. If you know me well, you know my tics and you know what I will what I do with my body or my hands. And you'll know that I'm having an anxiety attack. But if you don't know me, you would never ever see.
And isn't that remarkable that we do just keep up and carry on going as you talk about working through the anxiety? Many people on the outside, and I'm sure this will resonate for you, you work on stage.
Yep.
You work on a microphone. You speak in front of crowds all the time. Danny surely copes with the onslaught of people looking at her all the time. In fact, Danny wants that,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not the entire Danny, right? That's not you in your entirety. And it's difficult to explain that to others. So I want to say I'm exceptionally proud of you for working through what you're working through. And there was something you said a little bit earlier about the doom scrolling and the running, the escapism, because healing is hard.
Yeah.
It's much easier for us to disappear into a box of chocolates or scroll through Instagram and judge other people's lives but to do the work is really hard and it does take time.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important thing for us to remind others of, It's not just going to happen. It's taken us however many years to get to this point. You need to give yourself the grace to realize that it's going to take a while to unlearn, to detangle, to rewire, and to reframe how we interact with the world.
And it's okay if you never get to the end. There may not be an end. That's okay, as long as you are actively doing the work and putting in the daily practices. And I'm saying this, I haven't meditated yet today. I haven't eaten anything but coffee yet, and it's almost 10 o'clock. But I will be better. I will go and drink some water. I will go and have lunch. I will do these things. I will get out in the sunlight. And every day, if you are just 1% better, that adds up. Just do 1%. Go to bed a little bit earlier. Leave your phone somewhere else. There are so many things that you can do if you're not ready for therapy yet that could help you. And I wish that I had done them, man. I would be so much further along.
I hear you. I'm very proud of you. Well done.
Thank you, Sean. Don't make me cry. But also, just to the point that you made earlier, it's so lovely to be seen. Thank you. About the we work in this industry, so therefore we must want the attention and we must want to be on stage. When you asked me what I'm afraid of, I didn't say the thing that I'm actually anxious for this week. And I haven't slept because I am anxious about it. And it should just be something so normal for me because I do it all the time. And everyone's always like, oh my gosh, you're so great. Thank you. I have to MC this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I get the most incredible stage fright. As I'm walking up those stairs, I feel like I might die. And I've got to get the first 3 sentences out before I'm okay. And I think a lot of people don't realize that just because it's your job doesn't mean you're always going to be fine with it. Anyone who has a big presentation or who's showing a house or is planning a lesson, there's always some anxiety around something. And that's okay too.
Well said. And thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Danny lives in Brakpan on the far east of Johannesburg and shares her home with her husband, 1 cat, and 6 dogs. You can hear Danny Painter on Jacaranda FM and follow her journey to wholeness as she shares it in her authentic way across social media. Did you know that the international symbol for mental health awareness is a green ribbon? Reason being that green signifies new life, new growth, and new beginnings. So I thought I'd drop an Easter egg in this episode, a green heart. Please share a green heart emoticon to an Instagram story and tag me, Sean Lewitz, in it. You don't need to say anything else. It'll be our thing. And you can help me to continue telling stories of vulnerability with messy, perfectly weird little humans just like me by giving the podcast a 5-star review on your favorite listening platform. Oh, and if you're looking for ways to incrementally build a healthier life, subscribe to the podcast companion newsletter, Something Shifted, for free. The link is in the show notes. I'm Sean Lewitz. Chat soon.